Great upload speed. यार अपलोड स्पीड दे दे।
Attention. Reporting the target position. Acknowledged. Concentrate fire on the designated target. Fire! Torpedo tubes destroyed! All stations requesting fire on the designated target. All stations requesting fire on the designated target. Enemy battleship sighted. Enemy destroyer detected. Enemy battleship sighted. Sighted. Our team has taken the lead. warship. Affirmative. Concentrate fire on the enemy warship. Roger. Get back! Requesting support. Torpedoes to port. Torpedoes to port. Protect that area. Ahead. Torpedoes, direct front. I need intelligence data. Our victory is in sight. Ships on fire. All stations, defend that area. Our victory is in sight. Capture that area. Capture that area. Our victory is in sight.
What are you doing, Edinburgh?
Protect that area. Do not let the enemy take the area. Protect that area.
What are you guys doing?
Roger. All stations, proceed to capture that area. Enemy battleship sighted.
Arey yaar, what are you doing?
Concentrate fire on the designated target. Torpedoes report. Orbital engine
Ouch. Move, move. Pure pencil.
ship is on fire.
What? Why? Go kill the Alaska. Moron.
All stations, concentrate fire on the target. All stations, reporting the position of a strategic target. Concentrate fire on the designated
Affirmative. Enemy battleship sighted. Stations, clear that area. Acknowledged.
Concentrate fire on the designated target. Attention, reporting the target position.
What are you doing, Brindisi? Really? Fuck off.
Torpedoes, dead ahead.
Two man.
Battle ends in 5 minutes.
Thanks. It was fun. Fuck off, dude. Turn.
Victory is in sight.
Ow. جديد.
All stations requesting fire on the designated target. Concentrate fire on the designated target.
All stations, defend that area.
What the? Really? Where did you come from? Ow, ow. Ah, yeah. Hey. Something special, man. Come on, Tops. Catch up. Come on. Oh, so close.
force sighted on the horizon.
All stations, reporting the position of a strategic target. Good show.
Okay.
All stations, concentrate fire on the target.
Go on. Ah, how of it. He gonna die. Nothing really.
Good game, everyone.
অংশ নিতে দাও কষা বলছি দিও Dead.
Main turret critically damaged. Enemy is in sight.
Boof. Mino, 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 mino. Mino, 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 mino.
All stations requesting designated target.
Good game. Ugh.
I need intelligence data.
Hmm.
We are not alone. They are among us. As the skies light up, they believe we are blissfully unaware. But this activity by non-human extraterrestrial technology is capturing the attention of humans.
Ah.
I need intelligence data. Get back.
broke my phone screen, I don't wanna talk now. Hit the wall, just barely missed the window. And she said, it's all fine, it's fine with me. Why would I
Hä?
leave? Why would I leave?
Concentrate fire on the designated target.
Oh, damn. Dun dun dun. Ah, this is gonna end well.
Problem solved, sir.
Hmm. Um, really.
Report the Allied target. All forces provide cover for that target.
Don't make a lemming, please. What? Why?
All forces provide cover for that target.
Welcome to the astral plane. A dimension where you experience different energy. A place where you go when you fall asleep. You have your
Gizmo.
Astral plane. Astral plane. Astral plane. Fourth dimension, come and take a ride. Energy and the pain makes you come alive. Home is the place that you go when you sleep at night. See the truth wide open from your third eye. Welcome to the astral plane. Where your dreams and your nightmares play.
Doesn't matter of the night. Drove by your house and saw that nobody was home. Yeah, I got it on my own. In the cabin, check up on my phone, so I go now. Doesn't matter of the night. Drove by your house and saw that nobody was home. Yeah, I got it on my own. In the cabin, check up on my phone, so I
I don't know why these people are brain dead. What? Again, HE, really?
doesn't matter of the night. Drove by your house and saw that nobody was home. Yeah, I got it on my own. In the cabin, check up on my phone, so I go now. Doesn't matter of the night. Drove by your house and saw that nobody was home. Yeah, I got it on my own. In the cabin, check up on my phone, so I go now.
The luck. The luck. Why? What is the thunder doing? This lava is hacking most likely. Dude, how?
Doesn't matter of the night. Drove by your house and saw that nobody was home. Yeah, I got it on my own. In the cabin, check up on my phone, so I go now.
Oh, it's perfect shot when I'm not so spotted. Doing
All forces, provide cover for that target.
wanna run somewhere else?
they feed me a grim. I wish I never said yes to the pharmaceutical maniacs. Give my granddad passing trauma through the DNA he had. It's like his brain was confused, hard to understand. He used to mumble under his breath and blame the Jews. A young boy seeing World War II and had to escape the Nazis who were soon to come through.
Turn away, turn away. Guess I meant it. No. Not shoot, do not shoot. आगे बेर कोड़े जाता बैठो करना tops, take the tops.
Stuck here, can't move it.
Die, Slava, die.
No
One for sure. Oh god.
thing is, we see what
Really?
the fact is I can't face
Yeah.
the things that I've held on to. All this time, thought you cared. Break it open, nothing's there. Stuck here, can't move it. Too bad, we both losing. Thing is, I really believed you. Now I have to live with the reality of all the dreams I gave you. All this time, thought you cared. Break it open, nothing's there.
No. 999. All over pens.
Break your heart open, nothing's there.
I'm dead.
Nothing's there. All this time, thought you cared. Break it open, nothing's there. All this time, thought you cared. Break it open,
Be patient. Oh god.
Something potent, yeah. I need something more than that. I needed all your love from the start. Now there's no going back. You're giving me
Look
say
at the
what's
color.
on your mind. If I fall harder, could you not leave me behind? If I talk smarter, can you not talk down? I'm so sick of this shit, I'm so sick of this town. Tell me what's it gonna be? 9 missed calls and a swig of fantasy. Trapped in a loop of mediocrity. Maybe I'm the villain, I don't know it honestly. One more night got me thinking that I miss you. 2 more hits and that feeling continue. 3 more sips and I just wanna forget you. Forget you. I just wanna forget you.
Moving to commander which will require retraining. Talent and passion. Get upon earning the first blood achievement. Broad pennant activate. Mount a broad. Okay. Main gun traces change to alternative colors. Fireworks are launched upon activating the commander's talent.
is a little bit weak on the Bungo. This ship has insane firepower. It just doesn't have the tankiness to push like I happen to be in this game. So that's okay. It's actually a good thing that it's a little bit more balanced. It's not an all-out tank and has insane concealment as well. Longer at the expense of letting fires burn more on our ship to actually get that buff. I am taking Emergency Repair Expert as well as those where we're not doing as much. I have 270T here, giving us, again, that's 7.5%. Yeah, it's more than a little bit greedy, I would say. Heavy AP here, giving us, again, that's 7.5%, but more fire damage kind of sucks. Furious, giving us some reload, but at the expense of letting fires burn more on our ship to actually get that buff. I am taking Emergency Repair Expert as well as Concealment. Concealment's just very, very powerful here.
We have 45, 55.
Let's give them a hard time. Enemy force detected.
The idea of a continuing existence despite the passing of a person's physical form is one that has long fascinated humanity. But what if it were possible to force such an entity into being via the use of nothing more than sheer willpower? In this episode, we will examine a case in which that concept was tested and resulted in some degree of success, an undertaking which became known as the Philip experiment. Thanks to BetterHelp for this paid partnership. BetterHelp is an online service that connects you with a credentialed therapist who is trained to listen to you and give helpful, unbiased advice. I've shared with you before that I've struggled with anxiety most of my life. When I'm feeling anxious, it's hard for me to concentrate. My heart races and I often avoid situations that make me feel worse. I want to grow bedtime stories as a channel and podcast, so I don't like that my anxiety sometimes gets in the way of that. That's why I decided to try BetterHelp. I've started speaking with the therapists on the platform about ways to reduce my anxiety, and their guidance has been invaluable. Over 4 million people have used BetterHelp to start living a healthier, happier life. So if that's something you want too, visit betterhelp.com/bedtimestories. To get started, you fill out a questionnaire, and then you'll be matched with your therapist in most cases within 48 hours or less. And if that therapist isn't a great fit, you can switch at no extra charge. You can communicate with your therapist through messages or phone calls, whichever feels right for you. It's a more comfortable way to ease into therapy. If you think you might benefit from therapy, consider BetterHelp. Click the link in the description or visit betterhelp.com/bedtimestories. Clicking that link helps support this channel, and it also gets you 10% off your first month of BetterHelp, so you can connect with a therapist and see if it helps you.
Reporting the target position.
The reporter looked on, notepad in hand, as those assembled in the centre of the room continued to speak amongst themselves in hushed tones. Only one other person besides himself and the group was present, a colleague who had been appointed to remain alongside him for the duration of their meeting. The people who were seated around the small table before him all shared something of a loose association, but were fully aligned in their fascination with the afterlife. They had been conversing amongst themselves for several minutes now, recounting the history of a long-dead English nobleman, who appeared to have lived something of a colourful past.
Provide anti-aircraft
The journalist had been midway through recording some of this sordid history when he suddenly paused, detecting a visible flicker of the lights situated above him.
I need intelligence data.
Although only momentary, this temporary dimming went on to repeat itself several times. At the point he considered commenting on this phenomenon to his chaperone, the journalist's eyes suddenly widened in surprise. The table which the group was seated around seemed to shunt slightly to one side, before moving back to its original position. This unnatural occurrence would be repeated a further 3 times, much to the apparent joy and amusement of those in the centre of the room. The reporter began to scrawl in his notepad with some haste, attempting to document everything he was seeing, along with his own personal feelings about it. He then glanced up at the table, as there was an audible exclamation of wonder and surprise from those assembled there. To his astonishment, a light and translucent patch of haze seemed to have formed immediately above them, which slowly began to expand. Its smoke-like tendrils ventured forth to probe the surroundings, as if it was somehow alive and searching for something. It then began to glide across the small space towards the journalist and his escort. This prompted the visitor to hurriedly replace his notepad in his coat pocket and make a hasty retreat from the room.
I need support.
Somewhat bewildered, he was completely at a loss as to how he was going to present what he had just witnessed in his newspaper column the following day. It was a story of a human soul which had been successfully summoned at a séance centuries after its human existence had ended. However, the man that the soul belonged to had never actually existed. It was nothing more than a manifestation, a thought form, created by the small gathering of people who had summoned it. No matter what their wider political or religious views, every society throughout history has made reference to the existence of spirits and the notion of an afterlife. Stories have been passed down from one generation to the next, relating encounters with unknown spiritual entities or the souls of departed loved ones. Discussions on this subject have identified an apparent trend, wherein people who died under the most tragic circumstances seem unable to move on, tethered to a particular person or place with which they were previously associated, continuing to manifest within the physical realm. Quite often it has been theorized that it is the trauma or unexpected manner in which they died that has led them to remain upon the earth. Perhaps the horror of their departure proved too confusing to fully process, or generated an overwhelming sense of unfulfillment or regret, which then drew them back to the living. They then appear before startled witnesses, either repeating their actions at the point of their death, or issuing warnings about the manner of their passing. Scientific opinion on the phenomenon remains starkly divided, with some asserting that there may be unidentified energies or processes at work, forces which currently are not fully understood by the scientific community, but which somehow ensnare and preserve the souls of the departed. Others believe, however, that the spirits in question instead reside solely and firmly within the minds of those who have allegedly encountered them, somehow generated by the participants in the event, the side effects of varying degrees of protracted guilt or trauma. This somehow converts their own vision into a tangible apparition, which is then witnessed by third parties. During the 1970s, one group of researchers based in Canada attempted to demonstrate that it was the human mind which facilitated the appearance of ghosts. The basis of this idea lay within the previous work of the group's founder, a British academic named George Owen, who had emigrated to the country several years prior. Possessing a strong background in mathematics and physics, Dr. Owen had become fascinated with reports of poltergeist activity from around the world. As a result, he had travelled extensively, interviewing witnesses from across the globe and documenting commonalities between each of the different cases. Owen would eventually form the opinion that high degrees of stress being exerted on the minds of those involved had caused them to manifest seemingly supernatural encounters. After settling in Canada with his wife Iris and meeting various other like-minded individuals, he had gone on to form the Toronto Society of Psychical Research, or TSPR. In 1972, Owen had proposed a bold experiment to the members of this group, in which they would attempt to will a fictional ghost into existence, the spirit of a historical figure who had never physically existed, and whose backstory had been crafted completely by their own hand. They would attempt to manifest this entity using only the power of their minds, inviting it to appear before themselves and other witnesses. The proposal was readily accepted, with a group of 8 core members, including Owen and his wife, dedicating themselves to the undertaking. Having secured a psychologist named Dr. Joel Witten to act as an independent observer for the experiment, Owen then set about creating his subject. He and his colleagues would craft an intricate backstory for the spirit they intended to create, which they could recount in such great detail as to convince themselves it could only be real. The first factor which Dr. Owen and his colleagues decided upon with regards to the creation of their test subject was the time frame in which it had existed. Examining various historical settings, they were eventually drawn to 17th century England, focusing specifically upon the reign of Oliver Cromwell. This was a time which had been written of at length by the chroniclers of the age, but to an extent still allowed sufficient absence of detail within which to insert their character. The recorded histories of later periods had proven too detailed, the high levels of information proving to be a restricting factor. In contrast, writings pertaining to earlier time frames lacked sufficient context,
Hold.
creating too many questions which disrupted the protagonist's backstory. So, it was into this setting that the fictional character of Philip Aylesford was duly inserted, along with many tragedies and torments experienced within his lifetime. An aristocrat of no particular fame or notoriety, Aylesford was raised a Catholic and had been a supporter of the king during the English Civil War. Now somewhat marginalised by the arrival of Oliver Cromwell as Lord Protector, Aylesford had retired to his estate in Middle England, determined to avoid scrutiny from his new ruler. Several years prior, and before the onset of the conflict, Aylesford had
And
married
fun.
Dorothea, the beautiful daughter of a noble family which resided a short distance from his own lands. It soon became apparent, however, that the two were not a match, with both parties withdrawing from one another, trapped within a barren and fruitless relationship. Philip had gone on to rediscover happiness with a common woman named Margot, whom he had encountered one day whilst out riding alone. Bringing her back to the estate in the guise of a servant girl, the nobleman had enjoyed a short and passionate affair, right under the nose of his cold and unfeeling spouse. But Dorothea soon grew suspicious of the new arrival, denouncing Margot for trying to bewitch her unwitting husband using dark magic. Thinking only of his wealth and reputation, the hapless landowner had gone along with his wife's accusation, even giving evidence against his lover at her trial. He had stood in silence as Margot was convicted of witchcraft, and then suffocated his emotions as she was led from the courtroom to be burned at the stake. Months later, his servants had found Philip's body lying twisted and broken on the ground below one of the battlements of his home, having hurled himself to his death in guilt and despair. With the detail of his sad tale now decided, the group went as far as to engage a local artist to draw a picture of their creation, before then setting about willing him into existence. Under the watchful eye of Joel Witten, the 8 members of the TSPR who had dedicated themselves to the experiment assembled on a weekly basis. During these meetings, they would discuss Philip's life in detail, questioning his actions and motives, exploring the grief that had led him to his tragic and untimely end. These discussions would then progress to invitations for the spirit of the dead nobleman to reveal itself, so that they could question him further on his life. Seated around the commissioned drawing of Philip, one member of the group would be nominated at each meeting to reach out with their mind. They would visualize the dead aristocrat and call him to attend, before going on to share what they had experienced with the rest of the group. An entire year would pass with no success, before Iris Owen proposed that they enact changes to the way in which they were attempting to make contact. Working under normal room lighting, as opposed to the candlelight they had previously been utilising, no one member was now allowed to act independently of the others. The group would instead silently reach out together in the hopes of contacting Philip's spirit, combining their efforts to manifest him. Almost immediately, this change in technique garnered results, with members of the group detecting a faint tapping upon the tabletop and walls. After several further meetings, the team devised a method for the spirit to communicate with them, recording a series of positive and negative responses to their questions. The audible knocking of their spectral visitor was later accompanied by physical movements of the table they were seated at, seemingly moving of its own accord a short distance from its original position and then back again, despite the group having only rested their fingertips upon it. As time passed, the table's movement in response to their questions became more pronounced, sometimes tilting to one side or rocking back and forth on one of its legs. There was an unexpected further development as the lights in the room began to dim or flicker, individually at first, and then together in unison. Philip's confidence and apparent abilities seemed to grow, to the point where he briefly appeared to those who had summoned him as a light mist. Eventually, after being observed by several independent witnesses and filmed as part of a studio television program, Philip's responses gradually became less frequent, until they finally ceased altogether. The spirit seemed to have tired of the brief existence which it had been called to, choosing instead to return to a state of inactivity.
Good game, everyone.
Fully acknowledging that this activity could only have been created via their own minds, Dr. Owen recorded several intriguing observations. If any member of the group was absent for a meeting or physically unwell, it was noted that Philip's spirit either did not appear or did so in an apparently weakened state. Several group members also reported poltergeist-like activity in their own homes after they had returned from their weekly meeting. This suggested that their creation had either accompanied them to their residence, or their activities had somehow attracted the attention of an unrelated, genuine spirit entity. Keen to replicate their apparent success, the TSPR went on to form a second group, comprised of members who had not been part of the original experiment. As before, they would spend several weeks crafting an entirely fictional character, settling on Lilith, a French-Canadian girl who had opposed the Germans during World War II. Once again, after a sustained period, their attempts to will the soul of the wartime resistance fighter into existence met with apparent success. A degree of dialogue was established via a series of knocking sounds and table movements, though not as intensely as with the first group. Similar results would be obtained in further seances involving fictional characters, carried out not only by the TSPR, but other groups based as far afield as Australia. Many years on from the events of the Philip experiment, the fictional ghost's legacy remains something of a double-edged sword. On one hand, the research generated surprisingly little criticism or pushback from the scientific community towards the published results. However, there has never been any real agreement as to how what was witnessed came to be achieved. Despite none of the participants claiming to possess psychic powers, some commentators cite the experiments as proof that such latent abilities must truly exist. Others take a more grounded view, agreeing that it was nothing more than a shared hallucination created by those who participated, with each of those present subconsciously influencing the physical side effects. A smaller number of observers postulated that a real entity may well have been summoned from the astral plane, which then took on the identity of Philip as part of a deceitful act, impersonating their creation for its own demonic ends. As with numerous other assertions and trials of this nature, the perception of the event may be influenced as much by the observers as by the participants. Depending on the extent to which an onlooker believes in such things, they might choose to overlook someone else manipulating objects, or even agree that an apparition is manifesting, even if it does not truly exist. Conversely, some individuals may completely reject any inexplicable phenomenon, attributing it solely to deception and manipulation on the part of those involved. Much like the individuals gathered around the table during the Philip experiment, it could be that people often see only what they want to see. And as to how real it is, well, that is entirely within the eye and the mindset of the beholder.
Fuck off, man.
Victory is in sight. Requesting support.
During one of our previous episodes, we examined a series of strange incidents which are believed to have taken place at an isolated cattle ranch located in eastern Colorado. But as inexplicable and fantastic as those occurrences may have been, they are utterly eclipsed by a somewhat unrelated series of events which are alleged to have transpired on another property, a rural homestead which would come to be known as Clearview. We have previously examined reports that the United States may have conducted clandestine experiments during World War II, with the infamous Philadelphia experiment allegedly cloaking a naval warship at great personal cost to those involved.
Games.
Stories persist that the events aboard the USS Eldridge form the basis for yet further disturbing research on the part of the US military, a sinister scientific program known as the Montauk Project. On the afternoon of the 12th of July 2008, local police were called to the Ditch Plains Beach in Suffolk County, New York, to reports that a body had been located there. Having arrived, officers parted the small crowd of onlookers to discover that the remains which had washed up with the morning tide were thankfully not those of a human being. Strangely though, they were also not of any animal that either the police or any of the assembled witnesses had ever seen before. The creature in question was roughly the same size as a large canine, but completely hairless, with a set of large incisors jutting out from below what appeared to be a beak-like nose. Whilst the corpse of this bizarre-looking entity was in the process of being recovered, word of the incident quickly spread throughout the local community. The coming days would see journalists from numerous news outlets descending upon the towns near to the beach, asking residents for their theories as to what the carcass could be. For the most part, the townsfolk believed the creature was most likely a raccoon or coyote, which had bloated and degraded having spent a long time in the water. Others suggested to the reporters that the dead animal could be some kind of bizarre hybrid, created as a result of experimentation at the nearby Plum Island Disease Centre. And in a handful of cases, those being questioned became visibly nervous and evasive, intimating that the mysterious animal had originated elsewhere. Directing the journalists to a redundant military complex situated several miles to the northeast of the beach, they simply refused to speak of the matter any further, and warned the reporters that the abandoned facility was a place of great danger, where horrific crimes had once taken place. For those journalists who placed any credence in the assertions of these nervous citizens, their short drive up along the coast would lead them to the Camp Hero State Park. Located within the boundaries of this large area of outstanding natural beauty are the remains of a US naval base, which date back to the height of the Second World War. Constructed during the early days of 1942, Camp Hero was intended to provide defences for local maritime traffic against the murderous attacks of German U-boats. In a bid to hide the base from potential enemy sympathisers, several efforts were made to disguise it as a local fishing village. This resulted in depictions of windows and doorways painted onto the large concrete bunkers, and fake chimneys added to replicate local houses and shops. Having been closed down shortly after the surrender of the Axis powers, the onset of the Cold War saw the fort reactivated and renamed the Montauk Naval Air Station. Its primary purpose shifted to radar tracking, part of a wider national early warning system to protect against incursions by Soviet nuclear bombers. The Montauk Air Station would continue to act in this capacity until the early 1980s, when the decision was made to finally close the base as part of a wider decommissioning project. The authorities, however, elected not to dismantle the 90-foot-tall radar dish that loomed over the coastline there, instead leaving it as a reference point for local shipping. With the empty buildings falling into disrepair, the Parks Authority later fenced them off completely to prevent public access and avoid potential accidents at the site. For roughly 20 years, the station's role in the wartime defense of the United States was largely forgotten, only to explode back into the public consciousness during the late 1990s. A man named Preston Nichols began to give interviews promoting a book he had written, in which he detailed a sinister and secretive history of the Naval Air Base. He alleged it had been covertly used by US intelligence agencies to try and gain superiority over foreign leaders and governments. The project, which he claimed to have been a part of, was ultimately deemed a failure by those who were running it. The facilities at Montauk quietly shut down at the same time the base was closed, hiding any evidence of the tragic loss of human life which had taken place there. At the heart of Nichols' allegations lay a covert CIA initiative that had been conducted during the dying days of World War II, in an effort to boost America's post-war prestige. Named Operation Paperclip, this project saw CIA agents working hand-in-hand with Army intelligence resources to find and then abduct leading Nazi engineers from mainland Europe. Faced with the prospect of a public trial and possible execution if found guilty, thousands of German scientists readily elected to work for the US government under new assumed identities. In doing so, they provided their handlers with details of the controversial and arcane experiments which their former superiors had demanded, and the means of how to continue such work. Included amongst these secretive procedures were projects aimed at achieving time travel, mind control, and transit across interdimensional pathways. Nichols claimed that a number of these scientists were posted to the Montauk Naval Air Base, with their work conducted in a series of underground levels beneath the main complex. It was here that they continued to refine drugs and techniques designed to control and suppress human will, just as their previous masters had ordered them to do during the war. This work formed part of another notorious CIA program, MK Ultra, which would eventually be closed down in the 1970s when the general public came to learn of its existence. There was a widespread public outcry when it was revealed that participants in the program had died or committed suicide as a result of the substances they had been administered. Preston Nichols alleged that the limited information which had managed to find its way into the hands of the US Senate was just the tip of the iceberg, and that the full reality was much more disturbing. Use of mind-altering chemicals and psychoactive substances only formed a small part of the work which had been undertaken beneath the Montauk Air Base. The scientists there had apparently utilized other techniques, such as high-frequency radio waves and brutal physical torture, to fundamentally alter the psyche of their test subjects. They also used the same methods to eventually wipe the memories of the staff who had worked with them on the Montauk project, including the memories which had been held by Preston Nichols himself. Nichols alleged that during the latter half of the 1980s, he experienced several bizarre and unsettling encounters with people he had never met before. These individuals had approached him in the street or made contact with him at his place of work, going on to claim that he had been their boss on a secret government project. Initially dismissing their remarks as some sort of prank or possibly even mental illness, Nichols eventually became disturbed by the fact that each person appeared to be recounting the exact same set of details. They attempted to convince him that he had been the deputy director of something known as the Montauk
what is
Project,
this?
based at an
Nice.
airbase which was situated in the New York district of the same name. Eventually, these encounters compelled Nichols to undertake a visit to the site they had described, where he was able to persuade a caretaker to allow him access. Almost immediately, as he cautiously made his way through the empty offices and abandoned hangars, Preston Nichols began to recall memories he had never known before. He experienced visions in the third person, as he and others carried out horrific experiments on young test subjects. Hurrying to where he recalled that staircases and escalators to the lower levels were located, he was stunned to find that each of them had been concreted over. Exiting the building, his gaze then rose to meet the dilapidated 40-foot wide radar dish that loomed over the base, as he recalled its shocking hidden purpose. It had been used by him and his colleagues to broadcast extremely high-frequency radio waves into the local community, before conducting inquiries into the effects. A subsequent visit to the local police station soon uncovered evidence that the events Nichols was now recalling had indeed taken place during the 1980s. One of the officers on duty there related that whenever the radar dish was seen to rotate above the base, bizarre and inexplicable incidents would go on to be reported. These included groups of people stood together for several minutes in trance-like states, before regaining consciousness, with no idea as to why they had assembled in such a way. There were also instances of mass deaths of local animals and birds, as well as residents being rushed to hospital with severe headaches and nosebleeds. Alongside this, local youths were coerced and blackmailed by CIA operatives into becoming test subjects in the underground levels of the base. They would be starved and physically beaten on the orders of the scientists, before attempts were then made to clumsily reprogram their brain patterns. This was all for the purpose of ascertaining whether it was possible to unlock psychic powers, such as the ability to project themselves to other locations, or to harm others, without having to be physically present. As time passed, Nichols produced more books on his experiences, and in doing so, only managed to undermine any semblance of credibility he had once held. Each successive publication became more fantastic than the one before, until he was eventually forced to admit that he had added fictional content to make them more appealing to readers.
Really? Heck.
However, Several other individuals would later come forward, also alleging they were participants in the Montauk Project, who later regained their memories after having them wiped. These included James Bruce and Stuart Swerdlow, both of whom claimed to have been abducted by the military and then experimented upon at Camp Hero. They were only two of a much wider number of test subjects who were starved, drugged and beaten in an effort to unlock powers and abilities buried deep within their psyche. The young test subjects were encouraged by their captors to try and harm one another using only the power of their minds. Efforts were also made to see if it was possible to remotely project their consciousness to other parts of the globe in order to observe the secrets of those nations, an ability otherwise known as remote viewing. Even more bewildering was the testimony of two other men, Al Bialik and Duncan Cameron, both of whom claimed to have been crew members aboard the infamous USS Eldridge. The pair described how, as the situation spiraled out of control inside the warship during the events of the Philadelphia experiment, they had run up to the deck. They had surmised that the only way they would survive the fate experienced by their comrades would be to jump clear of the hull, only to then wake up 40 years in the future, several hundred miles away inside a hangar at the Montauk facility, where scientists were experimenting on portal technology. Agreeing to join the project, the two men worked at the base for several years, helping scientists in trying to harness wormholes to travel through space and time. In one instance, they allegedly survived a tragic and brutal accident that killed many of their colleagues, when something had emerged from one of the portals and gone on a killing spree. They stated that this had been the catalyst which persuaded the government to close down a hidden reactor beneath the site, concreting over all the entrances that led down to the lower levels. Just as with the other test subjects, their memories were then wiped, but restored naturally over time. In the years since the first stories of the Montauk Project emerged, many people have managed to sneak into the abandoned airbase in search of answers. Geological surveys have produced evidence of tunnels and chambers hidden beneath the derelict buildings on the site, as well as what appear to be sealed up stairwells. Perhaps of note is that in the covenant agreed with the military, it is specifically stated that the Park Service were only granted authority over anything above the surface of the ground. The radar tower is still present, with suspicions that it was not left as a navigational aid at all, but that it was instead still used in secretive experiments. The location of the base was perfect for the amplification of high-frequency signals generated by other hidden facilities located around the wider United States. Some locals even allege that they have seen the dish rotating since the base was shut down, and that people in the vicinity continue to suffer headaches and nausea as a result. It is impossible to deny that the many haunting and fantastic accounts provided by those who allege they were involved in the project test the limits of believability. And if the story sounds like the plot of the TV series Stranger Things, that's because it is. The writers were directly inspired by the events which were alleged to have taken place there, and even named the show Montauk when pitching it to various streaming services. Despite the outlandish nature of such claims, however, it is equally possible that as more and more of America's historic military secrets continue to be uncovered, some confirmation of their accounts may still be forthcoming. Their stories have already left an indelible mark upon our society in numerous ways, referenced in various works and pop culture. In this way, the Montauk Project and the other alleged CIA programs associated with it will never fully fade away from the public consciousness.
Thank you.
In January of 1931, the inhabitants of a small settlement on the shores of Lake Anjikuni vanished under mysterious circumstances. There was little information available to the Mounties who were dispatched to investigate, but it was the testimony of a local trapper that troubled them most. He stated that he had witnessed blue lights hovering in the sky about a week before the disappearance. In the closing weeks of 1970, the badly burned remains of a female victim were discovered lying on the slopes of Mount Ulriken in Norway. Not only was the manner in which she died horrifying, but the extent to which her alleged attackers went to ensure that she could not be recognised was utterly bewildering. Her true identity has continued to elude the authorities right up until this very day. Make sure you join us this Wednesday on the Bedtime Stories podcast for our exclusive episode Ipsum Arcanum, featuring the stories of the village that vanished and the Isdal woman. Available.
Claro.
Available wherever you get your podcasts.
There is much death and suffering, there are often strange. What's the matter, man? See somebody? And these are true stories from service members serving in Iraq about their encounters with something the locals would collectively identify as jinn. The Baghdad Mall. Hey, stop! What's the matter, man? See somebody?
Frickin' kid, man. Scared the shit out of me.
Which way did he go?
God, he ran into this back room over here. Hey! Come out of there, now! Do not make me come in there and get you. Come out, now! Ah, stupid kids, man. Hey, kid. I said, come... What the...
Everything all right, man?
Dude, I just saw a kid running here. Did you see him come out?
Bro, I didn't see anybody. Are you sure you weren't just seeing things?
Fuck you, man. I saw a fucking kid. As much as I'm looking at you right now, I saw a fucking kid running here.
All right, well, maybe you should be the first to go down for sleep shift tonight, huh?
To hell with this place, man. Gives me the creeps.
This first story was submitted by an Army veteran using the handle @BlackJeepConvertible. He writes, in Iraq, we lived in a war-torn 4-story shopping mall, which means we also pulled our own security, solo. One of the rooms we used to pull security became infamous for paranormal activity, which started around midnight with eerie, unexplained noises, the activity then peaking around 3 a.m. with crazy, unexplainable stuff.
ठीक है दादा ने.
In that room, we sat in a corner, staring out the windows. We would hear feet shuffling and footsteps behind us the entire shift, so we all got used to it. It's not like we had a choice anyways. Then around 3 a.m., the witching hour, crazy stuff starts happening. One of my friends had a giant black trash bag that was lying next to him. It was full of empty Rip It cans and water bottles that got flung into the air, throwing trash everywhere. He got so scared, he threw his chair across the room and called SOG to spend the rest of his shift with him. We had sergeants chase kids into empty rooms when there was only one door in and out. We were supposed to be the only ones inside the mall. No local civilians, especially not kids. Another one of my friends ended up literally frozen in fear when he saw a grayed out, transparent Iraqi soldier walk up and sit next to him during his shift. He said he just froze the entire shift and tried not to look at it. The entire exterior of the mall was riddled with bullet holes and craters, so we figured a bunch of people died there before us. But we later found out the one room we experienced the most activity in was formerly a discotheque, a party room, club, where Saddam's two sons tortured and killed people. That room also led to the roof, where they had apparently tossed people off of the building. My worst witching hour experience wasn't as bad as others. My shift that night was midnight to 0400. It started with feet shuffling behind me for hours, which wasn't too bad to get used to. And I was trying not to look away from the windows where there was at least some ambient light coming in, because when you're wearing night vision, all you see is a green circle through one eye and complete darkness through the other. It gets really creepy when you turn your head, because if you do see something scary, it won't show up until it's directly in front of you due to the loss of peripheral vision looking through the night vision lens. So, after maybe 3 hours of staring into nothingness, it's now about 3
come on.
And all of a sudden, I hear and feel a whisper next to my ear, as if someone had their lips half an inch away from my ear.
Don't fuck with me! You know I'm scared of this shit! I will shoot!
I have never moved so fast in my entire life. I simultaneously stood up, turned around, gun up, light on, ready to shoot a ghost. I was hoping it was someone pranking me, but there wasn't anyone around me. I went and checked all of the adjacent rooms, but they were clear. So I broke an entire box of chem lights and tossed them all over the room, thinking I'm gonna be able to see anything coming now. But that just gave the room a really eerie green glow. Before, I couldn't see a single thing. Now, I think I'm seeing things moving because it's so dimly lit. I ended up spending the rest of my shift facing the room with my back against the window. I couldn't give a damn what was happening outside anymore. They could have had a VBID drive right up to us. I was more scared of the ghosts than anything. Another subscriber with the handle @GoodyTiger57, another Army vet who visited the same location, responded to his comment and his story with the following. The very first day we got to that mall, we were all like, holy hell, this place is really creepy. Like Shaun of the Dead times 100, and we were either late teens or barely old enough to drink, so obviously the first thing we did was go straight into the basement to check it out. was pitch black and really creepy. Didn't matter if we had guns. It still felt really scary. Out of our group, me and a few guys were the first to run out of there. Seen too many scary movies to stay there any longer. The last ones to leave kept saying they saw stuff, but we figured they were just messing with us because we chickened out, and it was only month 1 out of 15 of our stay. Never really went back down there, as OP6 and the surrounding hallways were scary enough. Footsteps in the gravel.
What's the creepiest thing you've seen while you've been out here?
Dude, okay, so our terp, right? He told me a story the other day. So he was standing on the inside of these T-walls right here, right? And he said, I mean, like he saw a disembodied shadow, like a person, but like only from the waist up, just go right through the wall.
Damn, really?
Yeah. Creepy. There was one of my corporals told me a story.
What? You can launch a dive up,
I
really?
hear that, right?
Yeah.
Hello?
What the hell?
Dude, where the hell's that coming from?
I don't know. Towards the Humvee?
I don't see anybody. This following submission was also submitted in the comments section from another one of your fellow viewers, who goes by the YouTube handle @JonathanGriffith7759. He writes, Iraq, 2011. We were at a patrol base no more than half a mile from the Iraq-Iran border. We'd black out the base at night for security with a single light at the smoke pit in the middle of the camp. The area surrounding the base had one of the highest casualty rates during the Iraq-Iran war in the 80s. First week there, I'm doing base security at the ECP with the alpha guy from the outgoing unit. It's 2 or 3 a.m., and we get on the topic of ghost stories. He tells me how our terp saw a waist-up apparition disappear through a T-wall, how they started experiencing paranormal things after bringing back a piece of gear they found out on a patrol, and a few other stories. But, so the base was covered in gravel to keep the dust down. And as he's telling me about all these things, about all these entities and these stories, we both hear footsteps walking across the gravel toward the Humvee. We can't see anything. We turn on our nods. Nothing. There's nobody around. Just a super creepy place. Especially walking around at night in complete darkness with just your headlamp. Also had a constant feeling of being watched when we'd go out on night patrols.
Before we get to the next story, I wanted to thank BetterHelp for sponsoring this episode. So, I served 9 years in the Marine Corps, and in 2015, I suffered a spine injury, which then resulted in my medical retirement in 2017. And on top of the fallout of now living with chronic pain, there was this unexpectedly abrupt transition out of the military, which I was not mentally prepared for. Long story short, I started to feel very alone. I rarely ever left my house. I became very short-tempered with people, especially my family. I was having these angry outbursts. I was breaking things, followed by these complete emotional breakdowns.
Demonic children.
Alright. Keep going straight back. Yep. Keep going. Hey. Stop. Turn him over to the right.
This next story was emailed to me in April of last year by a soldier named Tyler. I'll skip his last name. There wasn't any mention of whether he wanted to remain anonymous or not, but he can otherwise out himself in the comments if he likes. He writes, I was with Bravo 2506 101st Airborne. We were stationed in southern Baghdad in Fob Falcon, but were sent out to this little hole in the wall that we called the doghouse, down Route Senators, off on Route Red Wings, which was southeast of Fob Falcon. The house, or doghouse, which it was called, was an IED make house that was taken over and made into a base run by our Delta Company. Route Red Wings was this long, twisting road that finally split into a Y right at the doghouse, and we would have static patrols on this road just to have overlapping views along the whole length of the road. At the Y of the road, we had blocked it off, and we weren't allowed to drive farther south beyond OP Red, so we had these Jersey barriers set up on the roads to keep traffic from coming up from the south. And one night, we were being relieved from our static positions, and from there we would go on QRF, a quick reaction force. We would back up our trucks into this driveway, and I was always the last truck to back in, so I would pull security down the two roads that were blocked off. Now, like most places, the Iraqi homes, the buildings, they had these privacy walls around them, which are block walls with broken glass on top of them. And the area between the road and the wall was often this low scrub brush. So I sat there watching out over the roads and this brush. Now, mind you, it's about 03 in the morning. So we're backing the trucks up. I'm sitting up as the turret gunner with my 240 Bravo mounted on the Humvee. Complete darkness, using our nods, and we're acting as ground guides, telling the driver which way to go. Otherwise, we would drive off the driveway, and there was about a 3-foot drop. So you had to pay particular attention while doing this. And suddenly I spotted some movement in my nods. And I looked over to this wall in the scrub brush, and I saw this kid, about maybe 12 years of age, staring down at the ground. What immediately struck me was that he seemed to be glowing. There was this aura of white light all around him. Of course, I thought that was strange, so I immediately lifted up my nods, and I couldn't see him anymore. So I put my nods back down, and there he was, about 30 yards away. And as I stood there looking at him, I couldn't help but think, wow, this kid's almost angelic. There's no blemishes in this shitty, war-torn area in BFE. Now, these people were dirt poor, but this kid looks, like I said, angelic. Especially with this white light, this aura around him. And about this time, it was almost like this kid could hear what I was thinking, and he looked straight at me, meeting my eyes, and he smiled, and then it happened. As I was looking at him, his face twisted. The only thing I can and have ever been able to compare it to was in the movie, Passion of the Christ, where Judas betrays Jesus and all of the little kids' faces are all twisted and looking evil. That's the only thing I could think of. I have no other way to describe this child, if I could call it that. It turned and started to walk towards me. And I'm just thinking, what the hell is this? And then, as if it could tell I was frightened, it began to jog and then went into a dead run right at me. And I'm thinking, I'm gonna have to shoot this thing. So I immediately bend down and pick up a sight picture through my nods and click the safety off and start to put pressure on the trigger. Now this thing is only about 5 feet away from my truck. And so the trucks that were backing up are having trouble maneuvering. So at that moment, they all turned on their headlights. So this white light floods the whole area and my nod. So I'm blind for a second. And when I regain my picture through the nods, it's gone. So I click the safety back on the gun and I lean back into the turret. My medic heard me sigh, and he asked me what was wrong. And I told him that I thought I was going insane. Obviously, this all happened very quickly. We finished backing our truck into the parking location for QRF, and that's it. But for the next 3 consecutive nights, when I was on a sleep shift and had some kind of dream, I would have these recurring nightmares of this angelic boy demon. And a few days after seeing this, we were coming back down that road. We would be out at OP Red for 4 days at a time and then move back to Fob Falcon for a day and a half for refit. So now we were traveling back down the road in a convoy, and I was feeling lucky to be in the middle of the pack. I had my turret at the 3 o'clock position, and as we were driving, I see a group of people with a young girl standing apart from the rest. She was about 20 yards to their right, back against this privacy wall. And as we drove by, I had always made a habit of making eye contact with anyone I saw, but something just felt strange about this girl with her back against the wall. As we got closer, I noticed 2 things. One, she had jet black eyes. And 2, where she was standing, there was a canal that ran right next to the wall. I realized there was nowhere for her to be standing. This black-eyed little girl was hovering at ground level, staring a hole through me. And as this tree came between us, breaking my eye contact with her, and she had disappeared by the time I could see around the other side of the tree. I don't know if anyone else saw this particular girl or the demon kid, but other guys in my outfit later told me about seeing similar things. I'm convinced that that land is cursed. This story really still freaks me out, and I still get chills thinking about it.
Back up, sir.
Winged Jinn.
Hey, Doc, I did just want to say I'm real sorry. I heard about your family, so I hope you have a safe trip.
Damn, bro.
IED?
What the hell's going on?
Hey, radio him up. See what's going on. Here you go. Hey, what's up? Why'd you stop?
Something flew in front of the HV.
What?
The hell did he just say?
Flew? In front of the HV?
Yes.
Did you guys see anything? We didn't see anything.
Does anyone hear that? Helo?
Where is that coming
Yeah.
Yes, but I don't see it. Do the other 2 vehicles? Sergeant, what the hell am I looking at right now?
We got something out here.
Holy shit, what is that? This last story was shared online in 2020 by an Army medic serving in Iraq in 2006 under the user handle HaveADucky81. Like many who have shared similarly strange and unbelievable stories, she did say she expects people to disbelieve her. She said that in addition to not reporting this incident for obvious reasons, she and her fellow soldiers avoided sharing this story to avoid the ridicule. But she insists this story happened exactly as she describes it. She writes, "My unit in the U.S. Army was deployed to Iraq in April of 2006. We were in Ramadi. It was 123 kilometers, 77 miles outside of Baghdad. I was in a Humvee heading to Baghdad for emergency leave due to a death in my family. It was close to midnight. The Humvee I was in had 3 others and a turret gunner. The 2 other Humvees with us had the same, 5 total people in each, with 1 truck in front of mine and 1 in back, so we're the truck in the middle. I didn't have my rifle due to having already been checked out on leave. So all of a sudden, the Humvee in front of us slams on the brakes hard. And we all figured it was a possible IED or VBIED. The team leader and our HV radioed the lead HV. Just then, in the desert off the highway, all of us saw what looked like a black figure. It looked like a huge bird, and it looked like smoke was emitting from it, a blackish, greenish smoke with a bit of a blue tinge. So we're all trying to focus our nods on what we're seeing, and the two troops in our truck that had better nods than anybody else said they could see something but couldn't make out what it was. The smoke was distorting the view, and within a second or two, a rock was then thrown at one of the HV, and it was a big rock, like the size of someone's head. And we all froze. So due to rules of engagement, we couldn't just light it up. So we used a spotlight on it, and in that light, whatever this thing was, it just flew straight up, and simultaneously we heard a loud screeching noise. All of this happened very quickly. We all sat there in a state of mingled shock, curiosity, and what? Panic? And what the hell was that thing? When we got to Baghdad, we rendezvoused with, there was an Iraqi translator that they were picking up to bring to the Marines that were with us. And he told us quite plainly, it sounds like you encountered an Efreet. One of the team leaders responded, a what? An Efreet, this guy said, a winged jinn. We were all a bit speechless. And we chose not to disclose to our command this winged thing that we saw. Battle fatigue, now more commonly known as PTSD, that was a career killer at this juncture. It's been 13 years since this happened. I met my now husband in 2015, a fellow soldier, and coincidentally he had also been deployed to Ramadi with my sister unit, 26 Infantry Division at the time. He had also passed down this particular stretch of highway on his mid-deployment leave. He eventually recounted a story to me about something he saw, which completely shocked me because it was very similar to my story, with the exception that they never stopped. They just said screw it, they just boogied on through. They didn't stop their vehicles. I was a medic, so death was my daily norm, especially considering the time we were there was very deadly, including an aid station manned by soldiers that was ambushed and blown to bits. I still can't wrap my head around this. But it didn't end in Iraq. I think something followed me home, not sure what, although I've often wondered if it might have been a soldier, one of the ones I couldn't save. Because now, the last two places we've lived in, something has followed us.
Why am I spotting things?
For the living, death is an awful thing to bear witness to. And certainly that is much more the case when it is to the degree that an army medic or any of these soldiers encountered it. It weighs heavy on the mind, long after the experience has ended. Sleep deprivation and hallucinations are often attributed to many stories like these, along with combat trauma. And of course, that is within the realm of possibility when it is something that only one person is seeing. So what about what these soldiers saw? What comes to my mind is what the character Hamlet once so eloquently put it to his obstinate friend. There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy. Whether from the creative and abjectly curious mind of Shakespeare more than 400 years ago, or from the minds and memories of these soldiers who have lived and breathed these strange experiences in much more recent years, the subject of death has long remained a question mark for mankind. As the aggrieved figure of Hamlet stated while contemplating his own demise with a sharp bodkin in hand, He called death an undiscovered country from whose bourne no traveler returns. But had Shakespeare encountered what the soldiers have described, creatures that can sometimes be seen and sometimes not, perhaps he would have reconsidered that possibility. That of something traveling back and forth between the veil that separates us, the living and breathing, from the unknown.
But I want to kind of go into the personal side and be like, what have you seen that maybe gives some credence into this? I don't know. There's something else other than, I don't know, what we do day to day.
So, as far as all the bizarre stuff, and again, I completely chalk this up to hallucinations, because we did not sleep for more than a few hours during this week-long session. That was our final training phase of recon school. It would have been my second mission that we did, so it's probably at least 3 days of no sleep at this point. We were patrolling on the north side of Camp Pendleton, and then we're hiking up this dirt trail going up the side of this very steep hill, and we were in a staggered column. And so when you're patrolling, you do your buddy check, you do your over the shoulder, make sure the guy behind you is still there. And all of a sudden, I look over to my right, like my immediate right, and the guy that's Chauncey, who was supposed to be walking behind me, he's now walking next to me. Like he's kind of caught up to me, and I thought, when you're on these steep hills sometimes, you do just want to get up the hill, so you end up kind of picking up the pace a little bit just to kind of grunt it out, because you're tired of going slow on this steep hill. And I see him now walking next to me. Now, we have an instructor walking with us, so as a team leader, my immediate thought is we're going to get our butts chewed out if this continues. I was like, dude, you gotta, dude, like, what are you doing, man? Do you need something? Like, move back. Like, come on, man. Like, we're in staggered column, man. Like, move back. And I'm talking to him for like several seconds, trying to get him to, he's not paying attention to me. It's dark, and I've got nods on. And so I'm like looking at him, like my nods are on my left eye, as you know, because I'm a right eye guy and I shoot with my right eye. So I'm looking, trying to see him kind of awkwardly, trying to turn, and all of a sudden I hear Chauncey's voice talking to me, but it's not coming from my immediate right, it's coming from behind me. So I immediately then fully turn and look further behind me, and it's Chauncey is still behind me where he's supposed to be, and he's like, bro, who the hell are you talking to? And it just hit me that who was I talking to? And so I immediately looked back to my right to see who the hell was this guy, and he's not there anymore. And the only things I could see were like that area.
If you want to listen to the rest of this podcast that I did with Mike is an Iraq veteran who now works for Atlas News. We had a really long talk, like a 3-hour conversation. I will link it in the description and up here at the top of the video. Thank you as always to all of my viewers, to my patrons and YouTube channel members. Grace and peace to all of you. May God be with you no matter what you are dealing with, and I will see you in the next episode. When I enlisted in the Marine Corps, it took me a while to get used to being in the military, because some of the most mundane things that we did as part of the job, well, initially they seemed very strange to me. One of those things was the idea of going to the field. My first thought was that we were literally going to an actual field, just setting up tents in an open grassy area and living outside for a few days. But since there would be work involved, it would be like camping with extra steps. I guess that's not exactly wrong, but we never had tents. Being recon, we spent the entire time doing patrols and just roughing it out in the jungle, like Mowgli. And even if we did sleep in tents at times, most people would pick nice, safe, dry spots to set up their tents when they go camping, right? The military doesn't do that. Well, maybe the Air Force does because, well, they go camping at the Hilton. But when I reached my first duty station in Hawaii, going to the field meant packing up a week's worth of food, water, fuel, batteries, our rifles, all of our personal gear, radios, and so on. And then we would drive in military vehicles in convoy fashion on the highway, or hop on a helicopter and go from our base to one of several military training installations on the island, most of which were covered in thick jungle. Going to the field therefore means something different depending on where any given unit is located in the world. For instance, Hawaii was often windy, rainy, and miserable at night, but besides the centipedes, there wasn't much animal life out there in the jungle that would bother you. And they do bite, and they're very painful, but other than that, there wasn't really much out there. Going to the field on Camp Pendleton in California meant you might run into a rattlesnake or two, and probably stick yourself with a few cacti when you're walking around out in the desert at night. But the following two stories, one from a Marine conducting training in the mountains of Northern California, and the other from a National Guardsman training in the Wisconsin mountains east of the Mississippi River, well, I'm not sure I have any idea what they encountered, especially as they indicate if it wasn't human. This is the Smoke Pit, and these are true stories submitted by fellow service members. Stories about encounters that they had with something that is collectively known as a pale crawler, a rake. Marine Corps Mountain Warfare Training Center, Bridgeport, California. This story was emailed to me earlier this year by a young Marine whose name I have chosen to keep anonymous, mostly because he is still active duty and I don't want his command or anyone else to catch wind of this and berate him for sharing this bizarre story and associating his command with it, or to otherwise draw any unwanted attention on him publicly. He writes, "My name is Corporal Oscar with the United States Marine Corps, and I have a story I'd like to share with you from our platoon's time in Bridgeport for a mountain training exercise. A couple years ago, from September to October, our platoon Alpha 2 of 1st CEB Combat Engineer Battalion went to Bridgeport for a joint exercise with our Victor Unit 2-1. Before we got there, we were briefed back on Camp Pendleton about things like high altitude pulmonary edema and how the oxygen difference with the altitude could cause hallucinations. We also heard other strange stories about the training area, such as people sometimes waking up right as Marine animal packers, Marines patrolling with horses and donkeys, would unexpectedly walk through the middle of the patrol bases at night because the animal packers course used the same training area. Anyway, when we got to Bridgeport's lower base camp, we were given 2 days to acclimatize our bodies to the altitude. In that time, we explored the surrounding mountains, and we may or may not have climbed up mountains we weren't supposed to and taken some cool pictures. The strange activities, though, started around 2 weeks into Bridgeport. We'd always make jokes about skinwalkers coming by and grabbing us in the middle of the night, but something did actually show up. Yo, Rambo, put your damn knife away and help me get these tarps up.
All right, but one, it's a bayonet. And two, you gotta admit this thing is pretty damn cool. Look at this thing.
How much you pay for that thing anyway?
$250.
Damn, bro. Seriously? Did it come with a Camaro and 29% financing?
Whatever, man. This thing is awesome. I mean, it's a classic.
Just help me get the damn tarps up, will you?
All right, all right.
One night during an operation we called the COOL, C-O-O-L. I'm not sure what it stands for, probably Combat Operations, something. We were at Bridgeport's highest landing zone, LZ Owl. We'd set up shelter with our tarps for the night. I should mention this tree we hooked our tarps on was growing up against a large rock face. I was a Lance Corporal at the time. I had with me one other Lance Corporal, engineer, and Lance Corporal Water Dog, a water specialist, and we used large rocks, like small boulders, and wooden stakes to anchor down our tarps to make a pyramid shape against the tree. So one end of the tarps was attached to the tree, and it was like a lean-to kind of built around the entire perimeter of this tree, so any water would roll off and keep our gear and us dry underneath. Another thing of note, the water dog we had with us would often be messing around with his rifle because he had a bayonet with him, and he'd stick it on the end of his rifle. He liked playing with it, he liked showing it off. So once night came and the freezing snow started falling, we went under our tarps and into our sleeping bags. This was around 9 p.m. I woke up around 10 p.m. to the sound of someone racking the charging handle of their weapon back. It's dead quiet up there. And we're supposed to be in a tactical environment, so making unnecessary noises like that is going to piss somebody off. So I look around, and me and my other engineers' M4s were on the ground next to us, and only the water dog's rifle was around the backside of the tree, where only he could see it.
Rambo, you awake?
It was dark,
Yeah.
and so I figure
What's up?
it's this guy. He must be screwing around with his bayonet again.
Is that you?
So I asked him if that was him messing with his rifle.
No. Wasn't me.
He gets up out of his sleeping bag and tells me that it wasn't him. So now I'm thinking that someone, maybe one of the infantry guys that we're training with, has snuck up to our patrol base and is messing with us. So I pull out my K-bar and I crawl out from under the tarps. I'm gonna go threaten some poor guy who thinks he's gonna scare us, right? But there was nobody else nearby.
What the hell?
Hey, Oscar.
Yes, Sergeant.
What the hell are you doing?
I heard a noise. Did you hear like a rifle or something?
Yeah, is that you guys?
No, Sergeant.
What's with the knife?
I came out because I thought it might be one of the infantry guys or something.
Yeah, okay. Let me go ask the fire watch to see if they're screwing around. God.
So when I came out, my sergeant, he sees me coming up out of our lean-to, and he walks up to me and asks me what the hell I'm doing, standing there holding a knife and all. And I asked if he'd heard the noise that we did. And he said that he did, thinking it was one of us racking our rifles, which I told him it wasn't. So then he walks over to the nearby infantrymen on fire watch, and he asks if he or his guys were screwing around with their rifles. But that guy also knew nothing about it. So our sergeant comes back up and tells us that, and says to just go back to sleep. So I went back in my sleeping bag, and I forget all about it. Next time I woke up was 6 a.m., reveille. But now, our tarps are all on the ground, like something had pulled them down off the tree. And the small boulders we used to hold them down, they are nowhere to be found. And the stakes, same story, gone. So, as we're trying to figure out what had happened with our tarps, our sergeant comes back up and tells us what he saw earlier that night. He said he didn't mention it because he thought he was seeing things at the time. But after he told us to go back to sleep, and I had crawled back into my sleeping bag, my sergeant said something caught his eye up at the top of the rock face behind us. And so he looks up and he sees this bald, naked, human-looking figure with shining eyes looking over from on top of the rock face. And as soon as he spotted it, he said he saw it duck away immediately. My first thought was a video I'd seen of a guy who was filming his house because he thinks there's a skinwalker or rake around his house. And when he sees it on top of his roof as he's filming it, as soon as he saw it, this thing also ducks behind the house and disappears. So, again, my sergeant thought he was just seeing things. So, he said he just went back to bed as well. But now, with the tarps being messed with, I guess he thought he should tell us about it. We don't know what it was. Maybe somebody was messing with us. but I think we would have heard them moving around if it was a person. Whatever it was far more disciplined in silence than any infantryman or marine that I've ever met. I have a few pictures here as proof of our time in Bridgeport, if necessary. Well, brother, I don't know what your sergeant saw either, but at least all it did was just mess with your gear. At least it didn't steal any of it. I mean, imagine trying to explain that to Sif. What happened to your tarp? It was stolen by a rake. Uh-huh. Yeah, right. But as horrible as this is to acknowledge, and this is the reason that there's an episode for this, and there will be at least another one, or maybe two in future, because of the amount of stories I have, you are not the only person training out in the field to see something like this. I've got several more of these encounter stories from here in the US, and even a couple from some active soldiers. I think one was a British soldier, and I think a German soldier training in Germany. A hairless, decrepit Bigfoot?
Why I have teammates? What are you guys doing?
Curious alien? Well, only God knows, since it's not in any of the science books I've read. But since you didn't mention having any theories about the source of the noise you heard, which you and your sergeant both seem to identify as the charging handle on someone's M4, I did have one theory about that. These things, when they are sighted, are occasionally said to be excellent tree climbers. And since the sound woke you up, rather than it's not as if you were sitting there listening and you heard it, it was a sound that woke you up, I thought maybe what you took to be the sound of a charging handle, which sounds like this, might have otherwise been this sound, which is the sound of a branch breaking. The two noises seemed close enough to me that if your sergeant's eyes weren't lying to him, maybe this thing was up in the tree above you.
Who is spotting? Where is Minotaur, for God's
sake? Saw your sergeant or another Marine walking closer, breaking a branch in its haste to get out of the tree. Whatever it was, that's just one good reason that we still keep Firewatch, even when we're training. Stay frosty out there, guys. Fort McCoy, Wisconsin.
All right, ladies, let's go. Hurry up and plot your points. The faster you get out there, the faster you're going to get done. Unless you're not prior enlisted, then there's not really much hope for you. Officers are notoriously bad at LANAV, but...
This next story was submitted by a National Guardsman to the Phantoms and Monsters website. He writes, I want to share an experience I had while training with my National Guard unit at Fort McCoy, Wisconsin. I moved from enlisted to officer via ROTC and was attached to a unit in my prospective MOS while in the program. I don't really want to give specifics on my service as the community is small enough to identify me to my peers. In 2014, my platoon decided to conduct nighttime land navigation at Fort McCoy from 20:30 to 00:30 in the morning. While the Army is typically all about buddy pairs, night land navigation is one of the few cases we get to do things solo, because the whole point is to check that the individual soldier is qualified to do it without help. So I step off on my plotted route with my compass, my map, and headlamp in hand. For those who do not know, land nav involves finding these engineering stakes, these markers, on a course by plotting their coordinates on a map and then walking from point to point using various map reading techniques, terrain association, and, of course, a compass. At night, this is typically done without light as much as possible. When light is used, your flashlight, it's a red lens. This minimizes the impact on our night vision. Ostensibly, these methods also keep you concealed in a tactical environment, if you were actually doing this in a real combat scenario, along with practicing noise discipline, so it's all part of the training. So I was moving through the woods while making a token effort to be difficult to spot or hear. The woodland I was in was part of a larger forest system, but was frequently traveled. That night we had some 15 soldiers clomping around in the woods. My source of light was a headlamp that toggled between a red and white light. I had it set up initially so that the red light was the first light to turn on. So you turn it on, it's red, you turn it off, you turn it back on. After a couple seconds, it's still red. Because to cycle the white light, I would have to turn it off twice. So if you've used a headlamp like this, I don't need to explain it to you, but for those that are not familiar, when you cycle this headlamp, it starts on solid white. You turn it off, you turn it back on immediately, it changes to flashing white. You turn it off immediately, right back on, solid red, off again, back on again, flashing red, and then off. And then if you turn it back on, it's back on solid white. Now, I'm not telling you all this for nothing, but I'll explain shortly why that matters. During my initial planning, I saw that my assign points would take me to the other side of the course and back. Good hour-and-a-half distance, at least as the crow flies. A bit longer to actually walk because the terrain goes up and down and you're in the woods at night, you're meandering around trees, moving slowly, trying not to gouge your eyes out on low-hanging branches. But the points I had were more or less in a straight line with one another. So I was just going to hit each one as I walked out into the training area. So I estimated maybe 2.5 hours out and back. I was just going to walk out, hit all my points, and then just walk back after I was done. But I knew if I came back too early, I might be given another set of points. So I resolved to just walk out, take a break for an hour once I was done if I had time, and then mosey on back. The first half of this goes as planned. I get my points without much trouble and wind up sitting on a hillside at around, it's maybe now 10 at night. It's cloudy, but the moon is full, but it's windy, so the clouds are intermittently blocking the illumination from the moon. So I can see pretty well when the sky is clear, but there is like no illume when the cloud cover is too heavy. Occasionally I see a red light bobbing in the distance below me. A pair of my platoon members pass down on the hill in front of me using a white light to read their map, and I startled them when I asked if they needed help because, you're not supposed to be using your white light out there. But by the end of my break, I don't see any more motion in my area. Most people had likely walked out and back, they'd found all their points, or they were too lost and ended up taking one of the roads to get back. So I'm feeling pretty at one with my surroundings. Having sat in the same spot, eating stale Skittles for a good long while, there's owls hooting, trees are swaying, it was nice. I trot down this hill, and I step through some brush, and I'm now in a clearing where this prairie land intersects with forest. There are some dead trees in the area, and one of them is split. It's still standing, and it's split halfway up. At the top of this broken tree, about 15 feet up off the ground, I can make out a distinct head and shoulders silhouette against the clouds which were backlit by the moon. There's enough light coming through that I can still make out this silhouette of this person. So I walk up to ask how the hell they got up there and if they're stuck and they need help. When this shadow twitches and I get the distinct impression it's now turned toward me. I stand there looking at it, and maybe it's looking at me. The situation definitely feels off, but I wasn't about to let a battle buddy punk me. So I asked if they needed a hand.
Hey.
But mid-sentence, the moonlight comes back. And it's immediately clear to me that the thing on that tall stump was not a soldier. This moonlight glimpse is the best look I get at the thing. It looked like a stretched out bald person. Its long arms are clutching the stump. I can't make out the face, but it looks pinched, and by that I mean I couldn't see its eyes or mouth. Like they were very small and in the middle of the head. It's skinny, like it hasn't eaten, but it's tall and obviously strong enough to have made such a vertical climb on this tree. He was definitely looking at me. Probably was the whole time I was in the clearing, maybe even since I came down the hill. So I swear loudly.
Shit.
And then it rapidly scurries down the trunk. I flick my red light on, and I catch it on all fours, moving toward the brush line in the direction I'm heading. And automatically I keep toggling the lamp to be in the white light. That means it goes off, then to flashing red, then to back on, then finally to white. So in the flash, as I scramble to get my damn headlamp working, I see the thing at the wood line, but I think it's flipped itself around and is backing in to the tree line, probably to keep its eyes on me. And in the few seconds it takes for me to get to the white light, it's gone. I scan the tree line, which is now silent. When it moved, there was a scraping noise. Plus, the woodland brush was dense. If it was still running, I would hear it. So I reasoned that it must have stopped moving, and it must still be watching me. So I fumble to get my knife out, and I keep looking around the woods in front of me. And after what felt like ages, I start inching along a perpendicular path to my initial route of travel, an angle that will link me up with the hardball road that runs up and down the side of the training course. And once on the road, I figure I can just take that road back to where my platoon is parked. My major problem is that the road is 10 minutes of walking from my current position, and it's mostly woodland. That can't be helped. I have to get out of this clearing first. And my progress on that front is painfully slow because I'm just trying to keep my eyes on where I think this thing still is. And the whole time I am fighting this kind of natural urge to just freeze in place and not move. After sidestepping about a good 10 meters, I hear a corresponding rustling, and I think I see movement. That was enough to get me to just turn and bolt right into a downed log, which trips me. I scramble back up to my feet, and I look back to the wood line where there is an audible commotion. I glimpse an emaciated leg and an ass moving back into the woods. And at this point, I am done with the whole situation, but I don't want to run again and keep tripping. So I start power walking to the road, trying to look as much as I can over my left shoulder to see what this thing is doing. And over the movement of my own kit, I can hear it moving alongside me, parallel. And as I near the end of the clearing, I think I hear it picking up pace, as if to cut me off before I enter the tree line. I made the decision to sprint, and when I enter the woods, my path is clear, but I'm pretty sure I can still hear it moving along with me in my periphery. I don't stop. I'm just running hard until I hit that paved road. And I ate it pretty hard a few times, tripping over stuff in the woods, but I just kept frantically getting back up and running. And once I'm on the road, I just ran until I couldn't hear it. I didn't think I could hear it anymore. So now I'm winded from this dead-out run for I don't know however many minutes. And from the middle of the road, I had pretty good visibility, so I decided to walk, try to catch my breath. It's quiet for a while, and then I hear a branch move had to be about 30 feet in the air from the woods on the side of the road that I had just run out of. I snap my gaze up, and I see this pale, oval-shaped face, this ovular face, half in shadow, peeking at me from around the trunk of a tree, way up on the tree. I took off again, and I did not stop. And after what felt like way too long, I finally make it back. I see the headlights of our LMTVs, and I check my watch, and it was 12:15.
What happened, cadet? Did you get lost out there? Why are you're covered in mud? Did you fall down? Why are you out of breath?
I got lost. On my way back. I got lost.
You gonna be okay?
I'm fine. I knew better than to tell them that I saw what I saw. A monster, basically. In the years since drilling at FMC, I have never experienced anything like that again. McCoy does not have a history of disappearances, as far as I know. Neither do the two closest towns, Sparta and Toma. I've done night land navigation alone a few times since without issue. But this is less from courage, and more from me just deciding to think that, you know, maybe I just misinterpreted the situation and what I was seeing. But then again, maybe the world is weirder than I previously thought. Now, a story where a lieutenant